A Green Lantern has an important role in James Gunn's Superman, and not the one most people probably expected. If you're unfamiliar with the trash-talking, ego-driven, bowl-cut sporting hero Guy Gardner, this is everything you need to know about him before you go to see the movie.
You didn't think I was above fighting dirty, did ya?
Guy Gardner's story technically started eons ago when an alien race from the planet Maltis attained immortality. After one of their own accidentally created the multiverse and unleashed evil, they decided to declare themselves the guardians of the universe and bring order to as many planets as possible. After their first attempt to do so with robots went horribly wrong, they decided that only living beings who are free of fear can be trusted with such responsibility and created the Green Lantern Corps. The Guardians forged the Power Rings, devices capable of materializing all kinds of constructs, as long as they're green, of course. They entrusted the rings to those they believed to be free of fear and gave them sectors to defend, which they did for billions of years. One fateful day, Green Lantern Abin Sur is attacked while traveling through his assigned sector and crash lands his ship on Earth. Aware of his own imminent death, he uses his Green Lantern battery to locate any Earthlings who might be courageous enough to take on the mantle, and he thankfully finds two. One is an instructor named Guy Gardner, and the other is a test pilot named Hal Jordan. With no time to waste, Abin Sur requests whichever one he's physically closest to be brought to him, and that happens to be Hal. As Hal takes a Green Lantern oath and gains powers he never could have imagined, Guy has no idea that he was almost chosen to be a space cop for now. So who is this Gardner guy anyway? Long before he was nearly picked to be a superhero, Guy had a painful childhood, thanks to the actions of his abusive father. After spending his teenage years committing crimes and being a general delinquent, he cleaned up his act and became a college football player. Once he graduated, Guy used his physical prowess for good by counseling prison inmates before becoming a gym teacher, which was his profession until he got wrapped up in cosmic intrigue. After learning that another man almost became Green Lantern, Hal Jordan decides to track Guy down and make his acquaintance, but he doesn't tell his new friend about anything Lantern related. Guy effectively becomes Hal's understudy, but a man named John Stewart takes the position after Guy gets hit by a bus. When Guy puts on the Green Lantern suit for the first time and tries to take the oath, he immediately ends up vanishing due to a power battery malfunction. The next time he sees Hal, he's become a puppet of the villainous Sinestro, and although Hal manages to rescue him, Guy ends up with serious brain damage. For a while, Guy remains comatose as Hal and John continue their Green Lantern duties. Thankfully, Guy doesn't stay catatonic forever, as he comes to during the crisis on Infinite Earths. That said, he's not the same Guy that he used to be. Instead of being a generic do-gooder, Guy is now much more impulsive, stubborn, and hostile to authority. While the old Guy was just happy to be included, the new Guy is more intoxicated by the power the ring gives him. This change was made in order to make Guy stand out more from the other Green Lanterns, and his macho man persona is the one that he's most well known for today.
You kind of want to kiss the ring now, don't you? A little bit. Kind of want to kiss the ring? Come on. Somebody kiss it. Kiss it!
The world that Guy awakens to is a much different place. Hal is retired, John has replaced him, and the multiverse is undergoing a crisis like never before. After getting his bearings, Guy is recruited to stop the Anti-Monitor, finally becoming a Green Lantern for longer than a single issue. Naturally, Guy almost causes the apocalypse. He's told to destroy the moon of the planet Quad, which he doesn't realize would actually make the Anti-Monitor more powerful. He's stopped by John and the day is saved, but Guy isn't happy to be made to look like a fool. He isn't kicked out of the Corps yet, but he still has a bone to pick with his fellow space cops. After all, he doesn't see himself as one of many Green Lanterns. He sees himself as the Green Lantern. Even though Guy isn't the best team player, he's still willing to cooperate with other heroes, to a point. After a group of heroes thwart an attack orchestrated by Darkseid, Dr. Fate assembles a new Justice League that becomes known as Justice League International. When asked to join, Guy says he'll think on it, and once he does, he agrees to become a member of JLI's original lineup. That said, Guy's conflicts with his fellow JLI members are much more memorable than his fights with the actual villains. From the very first page of Justice League International, he sees himself as a natural leader of the group, and he gets heated whenever someone suggests otherwise. In one infamous moment, Guy challenges Batman to a fistfight, only to get knocked out by a single blow to the face. In another, he sucker punches Blue Beetle after challenging him to a boxing match. Guy isn't interested in sharing the spotlight, and he finally quits the team after Superman tells him off. Judging by his uniform in the trailer for 2025 Superman, the version of Guy depicted in the film is inspired by the character's JLI era in particular. That means it's it's only a matter of time before David Corenswet's Superman lets the brash Green Lantern have a piece of his mind.
Guy is, I think, can be fairly said, he's consistently an asshole.
Upon hearing that Guy isn't doing the greatest job defending Sector 2814, Hal returns to Earth to try and take back his position. Guy responds by challenging Hal to a fight, one-on-one, no rings. Loser has to quit the Corps. Even though Guy seems to have the upper hand for most of the brawl, Hal tires out his rival and manages to declare victory. Guy begrudgingly hands over his ring, officially leaving the Corps and becomes a free agent. Not content with being a normal human, Guy decides to try and acquire a yellow power ring instead. Sure enough, he gets a hold of Sinestro's ring and uses it to clean up crime in New York City for a while. He even takes on the vigilante name Warrior. Guy wields a yellow power ring until it breaks during a fight with Hal, who'd turned evil after being possessed by the entity known as Parallax. After that, he finds out that he has alien DNA after his latent powers are activated. It's a weird time for Guy, but it's not long before everything pretty much goes back to normal. After briefly being possessed by Parallax himself, Guy loses his Velderian DNA and regains his green power ring after Hal's mysteriously duplicates. The Green Lanterns work together to stop Parallax and return the Corps to its former glory. As the Green Lantern Corps works to expand its ranks, Guy becomes an instructor once again as he teaches new recruits how to fight without fear. He's promoted to Honor Guard, becoming one of the most crucial members of the whole operation. As a respected space cop, Guy gets up to all sorts of adventures with fellow Green Lanterns and other heroes. He's a jerk with a heart of gold, until he's filled with so much rage in the Blackest Night storyline that he goes red instead. Guy is inducted into the Red Lantern Corps, and he finds himself using a red power ring alongside his green one with devastating results. The year after the Blackest Night event ended, DC's New 52 initiative rebooted the comic universe, starting it over while changing certain details about long-established heroes. In New 52, Guy is a policeman's son who followed in his father's footsteps before taking his law enforcement abilities to space. But he's not the only other version of Guy out there. Not only is Guy a fan-favorite Green Lantern in the comics, but he's also had plenty of appearances in DC animated shows. His TV debut was in Batman the Brave and the Bold, in which the Guardians pair him with the Dark Knight in case he becomes a bit too much of a loose cannon. This take on Guy, played by James Arnold Taylor, was a welcome presence for fans of the character. It was soon followed by Young Justice, in which Troy Baker voiced the hot-headed hero. Finally, the Green Lanterns got a show all to themselves with Green Lantern the Animated Series. The program, which focuses on Lanterns, Hal Jordan, and Kilowog, featured Diedrich Bader as Guy in a supporting role, being just as arrogant as always.
I am the only Green Lantern of...
Green Lantern of Hey, better get back there.
Guy has also been depicted in animated films and video games, but he's been less fortunate in the live-action department. An early script for the poorly received 2011 Green Lantern movie included a cameo appearance of Guy in his college football years, but it didn't make it to the final version. For decades, the only official live-action appearance of Guy Gardner was in the unsuccessful TV pilot Justice League of America. Released in 1997 and starring Matthew Settle as the Green Lantern, it depicts Guy as a software salesman, much more similar to Hal in appearance and temperament. Fans have waited a long time for a live-action, comic-accurate version of the character, and they're finally getting their wish in 2025. Guy Gardner makes a proper live-action debut in James Gunn's Superman, bowl cut and all. Anyone familiar with Gunn's work will recognize Nathan Fillion as a Green Lantern, as the pair have collaborated on a consistent basis since the 2006 film Slither. Fillion had small roles in 2 out of the 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but his Superman role is a serious step up. That said, it technically isn't Fillion's first time playing a superhero, or a Green Lantern for that matter. He voiced Hal Jordan in 5 different DC animated films from 2011 to 2019, including Green Lantern Emerald Knight and the Death of Superman. Even though he's playing a more respectable Lantern, his performances in these movies definitely have a bit of Guy in them.
Give up? Please say no.
You'll never catch me, Lantern.
Lots of women say that.
Now Fillion has a chance to truly let loose, and Superman isn't his only opportunity. Guy Gardner serves as a link between the first film in the DCU and its shows Peacemaker and Lanterns. The Peacemaker Season 2 trailer shows Guy interviewing potential heroes alongside Hawkgirl and Maxwell Lord, the latter of whom bankrolled Justice League International in the comics. Lanterns, meanwhile, promises a more in-depth look at the Green Lantern Corps, with Kyle Chandler as Hal and Aaron Pierre as John. So naturally, Guy is slated to show up as well. There's no telling how many more places he'll show up in. It's a good time to be a DC fan, but it's an even better time to be a Guy Gardner fan. With a name like Mr. Terrific, he must be a pretty great guy, right? If you've only seen him in the trailers for Superman, you don't know the half of it. Quite literally, there are two of them. Here's what's so terrific about these Misters. We're gonna get into the comics history of Mr. Terrific in just a minute, but first, a warning. According to actor Eddie Gathegi, who plays the Michael Holt version of Mr. Terrific in Superman, he'll have a whole different personality in the film. He told the DC Studios Showcase official podcast,
It's not the comics.
Gathegi clarified that there's definitely comics influence on the character's backstory, but the film version's personality evolved on set.
I didn't even know what was going to happen until we did it.
Gathegi explained that he screen tested for the part, and usually when an actor screen tests for a role they land, they play it the way they did in the test. But that's not what happened for him on Superman. Eddie Gathegi said that while shooting scenes on set, he and director James Gunn found a take that was more interesting, complex, and
A little bit more unhinged.
unhinged is a particularly odd way to describe a character who, in the comics, always seems to have things under control. Way before Michael Holt became Mr. Terrific, the first character to take on the name was Terry Sloan. He first appeared in Sensation Comics issue 1 in 1942. Terry is a child prodigy who not only designs planes for the Navy at the age of 10, but also beats up the mobsters who try to steal the plans for his inventions. He easily bests chess masters. He graduates high school at 11, finishes college after a year, and goes on to win numerous athletic awards. He's a real all-rounder. By the time he's a young adult, Terry becomes depressed because he's already accomplished everything he wanted to. He even considers killing himself, but then he sees a woman named Wanda Wilson jump off a bridge and saves her life. Wanda explains that her little brother has turned to a life of crime, so Terry puts on a costume and challenges the kid's boss to a series of challenges, winning them all. The kids name him Mr. Terrific, and he starts a club for them, the Fair Play Club, to keep them away from crime. Fair play becomes Terry's motto, and he wears it on his costume. He doesn't have any superpowers, but is incredibly athletic and smart, taking on the nickname the Man of 1,000 Talents. Mr. Terrific spent much of his early days like most other Golden Age superheroes, fighting suit-wearing mobsters and money-grubbing businessmen. One thing that set him apart, though, was that both the civilian identity of Terry Sloan and Mr. Terrific were well-known celebrities. In one story from Sensation Comics issue 18, some crooks tried to take advantage of his notoriety, writing into a local radio station to have Mr. Terrific on their shows to sell war bonds. Assuming that Mr. Terrific is at the studio, the crooks take the opportunity to commit crimes during the radio programs. But Mr. Terrific quickly deduces their plan and gets some other talented fellows to appear on the radio show in his place, while he deals with the burglaries and apprehends the hoodlums. The story makes sure to note that even the criminals advocate for buying war bonds. That's Golden Age comics in a nutshell.
We've got to step up the sale of war bonds to $1 billion every month.
Mr. Terrific didn't appear in all that many original Justice Society of America comics. The most notable one is probably in All-Stars Comics issue 24, where he helps convince a young man to fight in World War II. Yeah, it was the 40s, what can we say? He was retroactively made a more active member of the team in later comics, such as when the post-retirement Justice Society reappeared in 1965's Justice League of America issue 37. The group that included Mr. Terrific would appear in a few more Justice League stories in the following years. Mr. Terrific was also a JSA member in the two-issue 1999 revival of All-Star Comics. In 1981, DC launched a flashback comic about a different 1940s super team called All-Star Squadron, which gets drafted into service by President Franklin Roosevelt. Mr. Terrific wasn't in every issue, or even most of them, but he did appear in a handful as a member of the team. During the Golden Age, Mr. Terrific didn't just fight guys in suits. In a full-on wild story from Sensation Comics issue 28, police officers in the year 7532 AD bring the masked hero to the future using a time beam. They hope that he can stop a would-be tyrant named Black Barax. Mr. Terrific beats him in a sword fight and threatens his lair by creating a volcanic crater with a stick of dynamite. A bold move! Black Barax relents and Mr. Terrific is sent back to his time. That's the only time the original Black Barax appears, but he'll return in another form and become important again later. The other arch-nemesis of the Terry Sloan Mr. Terrific was a retroactive creation, Spirit King, who could take on a spectral form and inhabit people's bodies. He didn't actually appear until Justice League issue 171 in 1979. That story makes it so that Spirit King was one of Mr. Terrific's old perennial enemies. Mr. Terrific finds him stealing some equipment from a university lab and tracks him to the Justice League satellite. The reason Mr. Terrific found Spirit King on the campus of Gateway University was because he had retired and started teaching there. But encountering his old villain led him to put his costume back on, travel to the satellite, and ask the Justice League and Justice Society, who were at their annual joint meeting, for help. Unfortunately, before the Justice League can discover where Spirit King is, Terry gets strangled to death. Spirit King had inhabited the body of Jay Garrick, the Golden Age Flash, and killed him in secret. Even worse, Spirit King gets away and the JSA has to chase after him. Even though he remained dead throughout various DC reboots and changes over the following decades, the Terry Sloan Mr. Terrific did make a few more appearances. He appears as a spirit to the new Starman in Starman issue 37 from 1997 and meets a group of heroes, along with some other fallen friends at the Gates of Heaven during the Day of Judgment event from 1999. The Spectre number 54 from 1997 introduces Michael Holt, another super genius and incredibly gifted athlete. Later comics would reveal his various accomplishments, like reading every major theoretical physics book by the age of 6. He has 14 PhDs. He's a self-made millionaire, an Olympic decathlete, and the third smartest person in the world. So yeah, we get it, he's done a lot.
He's smart enough to do Monitor Duty and the Sunday Times crossword at the same time.
Go ahead, Jean. I'm already finished with the crossword.
Like Sloan, he's also pretty over being alive, but not because of boredom. He's grieving the recent deaths of his brother and pregnant wife. After the Spectre saves Michael from a threat from some young gang members, the Spectre tells him about how he reminds him of the original Mr. Terrific. Spectre also tells Michael a story about the Spirit King taking over the body of Dr. Fate and creating a zombie version of Terry Sloan. But Terry's actual spirit stepped in to help save the day. Just a regular, uplifting anecdote. Ultimately, the Spectre makes an appeal for Michael to become the new Mr. Terrific, and he accepts, initially wearing sunglasses and a jacket with fair play on the back. It took a while for Michael Holt's Mr. Terrific to find his place, but he eventually found it in the reformed Justice Society. With a new look that includes a T on his face and a jacket that says fair play on the sleeves, he tracked the team down in JSA issue 5. He becomes a regular in the book by issue 11, and in those appearances, it's established that Michael is constantly surrounded by T-spheres, small floating orbs that he can use to attack enemies, project images, hack systems, even help him fly.
What does fair play mean to you? Fair play, I'm going to answer as Mr. Terrific, sharing my tech with the world.
It doesn't take long for Michael to reach a leadership position in the team. After a fight with Black Adam leads the team to call for an election for a new chairman, they select Mr. Terrific as the guy, even though he wasn't running. Now that's a win. He continues to serve as the JSA chairman until they disband due to the events of the Infinite Crisis series. In one key JSA story, the two Mr. Terrifics finally meet. Also, Black Barracks comes back in a much different form. In JSA issue 41, a far more robotic-looking Black Barracks arrives in the present in a giant ship full of attack drones. Lightning from Captain Marvel and Black Adam sends Barracks' ship with Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl inside back to 1944, where Terry Sloan is shaking down a low-level thug for information. Terry makes his way inside the ship, where he meets Michael and Hawkgirl. He matter-of-factly observes that they're from the future and comes up with a plan to stop Barracks. Upon deducing that Barracks must be his descendant, Terry threatens to shoot himself and wipe him from existence. Michael stops him, leading to a brief fight. Terry eventually retrieves the gun, and Barracks leaves, promising to return. Afterward, Terry reveals that the gun was never loaded. They team up once again in the story Past Mistakes, in which the old and new JSA teams meet up across time to take down longtime villain Degaton. As we mentioned, the JSA disbands in Infinite Crisis, but Michael quickly gets put onto another team, the one Batman assembles to take out the AI satellites gone rogue that's causing all the trouble, Brother Eye. Because of his mask, which is molecularly bonded to his face, Mr. Terrific is invisible to other technology. He's thus able to infiltrate the satellite and tamper with its propulsion system to knock it out of orbit. On the journey, Michael meets some bonds with Black Lightning and continues his friendly rivalry with Batman. Also, during Infinite Crisis, Michael joins a group of second-string heroes who band together to fight a huge group of escaped villains in the Villains United one-shot. In the aftermath of Infinite Crisis, the DC Universe skips ahead 1 year. The Justice Society reforms, and Mr. Terrific returns as a member, but he gives up the chairmanship, with Power Girl instead leading the team. That's probably because he's busy with his new gig with the United Nations Security Council's intelligence agency, Checkmate. There's a lot of intrigue built into Checkmate. Like a chessboard, it has two competing sides, white and black, though they're both mostly working toward the same ends. Mr. Terrific begins a series as one of the white bishops, but when the white king, Alan Scott, has to resign, Michael takes over. That puts a strain on his secret relationship with Sasha Bordeaux, the Black Queen. Their relationship carries on though, until Sasha sacrifices herself in an attempt to stop Darkseid in the final Crisis event. In a 2009 story, Injustice Society of America, Mr. Terrific dies. Almost. As the rest of the team attempts to save Wildcat from the B-list villain Tapeworm, Michael stays behind in his lab to do some work. A new recruit, all-American kid, who is apparently under some sort of mind control, approaches and repeatedly stabs Mr. Terrific in the back. The rest of the team returns to find Michael near death, rushing him to the infirmary, where Dr. Midnight performs surgery. Meanwhile, other members of the JSA interrogate all-American kid, who insists he doesn't remember what happened. Though Dr. Midnight tries everything he can, he ultimately declares Michael dead. But Dr. Fate attempts to revive Michael with sorcery, and that approach ultimately works. The newly revived Mr. Terrific figures out that All-American Kid was the villainous Kid Carnival the entire time, just pretending to be mind-controlled, and takes him down using his T-spheres. Just before the DC Universe got completely rebooted in 2011, Terry came back one more time, but not to do much good. In the Blackest Night event, dozens of heroes who died get revived by the villain Necron as Black Lanterns, zombies with superpowers. Terry is one of those revived heroes, and he makes his presence known in the Blackest Night JSA tie-in series. As Michael attempts to create a light energy to counteract the powers of the Black Lanterns, he realizes that Terry will likely figure out what he's doing. Just then, Terry and other former JSA members arrive at Star Labs. Perhaps disappointingly, there's no actual showdown between the two Mr. Terrifics. Michael's too hard at work finishing his energy source, which does manage to take down a zombified Golden Age Superman, who, yes, is different from regular Superman. Eventually, most of the other Black Lanterns get neutralized by the arriving White Lanterns. Some of the Black Lanterns are restored to life, but by all indications, Terry simply goes back to being peacefully dead. Both versions of Mr. Terrific have appeared on DC TV shows, though one much more than the other. Terry has only appeared in non-speaking roles. He can be seen in a painting of the JSA in an episode of Smallville, and he briefly appears on Batman, the Brave and the Bold as a Justice Society member. Michael Holt's Mr. Terrific has been in far more. He's in several episodes of Justice League Unlimited, where he ends up taking on a leadership role after Martian Manhunter resigns. He's also in an episode of Beware the Batman, but his most charming appearance may be on Justice League Action, where he was voiced by comedian Hannibal Buress.
And I'm so humbled to be here today, dedicating the new Mr. Terrific Research Center.
A version of Mr. Terrific, played by Echo Kellum, also started appearing on Arrow in its 4th season, but his name is Curtis Holt rather than Michael. He was inspired to take on the name and fair play motto of his favorite pro wrestler, Terry Sloan, who was mentioned but never seen. He also has 2 T-spheres. When DC relaunched its entire continuity with the New 52 in 2011, the Michael Holt version of Mr. Terrific was front and center, getting a solo series for one of the coveted 52 launch titles. He looked slightly different, his jacket was gone, and the fair play motto went from being on his sleeves to tattoos on his arms. He got glowing red eyes too. The series also plays him up much bigger as a businessman. His origin changes a bit too. While his pregnant wife, Paula, still dies in a car accident, it isn't the Spectre who inspires him to become a hero. It's a future version of his son, Aaron, who was kidnapped from the womb. The Aaron storyline never got resolved in the New 52 Mr. Terrific series because it was cancelled after just 8 issues. Nobody got back around to it until 2023, when Michael's son, who it turns out is not named Aaron but is in fact named Jeffrey, returns in The Flash issue 799. It's revealed that his kidnapper was Darkseid's Lieutenant Granny Goodness, who also abducted and trained several other children as an attack force. Michael brings him back to Earth, and Jeffrey moves in with his dad. He hasn't really been seen since. One storyline that does get resolved in the 2011 Mr. Terrific series involves rival businesswoman Karen Starr, with whom Michael is in a casual romantic relationship. He eventually learns that Starr has been secretly stealing technology from Holt Industries to build a quantum tunnel. When Michael tries to revoke her access to his company, Michael gets pulled into the tunnel and finds himself in an alternate universe. Michael would thus spend much of 2012 through 2015 on Earth 2, a world with lots of versions of DC characters that were either unlike their New 52 counterparts or didn't have New 52 versions at all, like the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. In a roundabout way, the 34-issue series and its 26-issue follow-up, Earth 2 World's End, gave the New 52 a version of a Justice Society when it didn't have one. Michael eventually escapes Earth 2 and comes back to the prime DC Universe Earth in Dark Days, The Forge, where he once again has his pre-New 52 look with the jacket.
That jacket, to me, is part of what makes that character.
Fire.
After helping to hold back the forces of the Dark Multiverse in Dark Knight's Metal, Michael assembles his own team in the Terrifics Issue 1. Upon learning that his company had been bought out from under him by Simon Stagg during his absence, Mr. Terrific attempts to stop some experimentation on Metamorpho. In the process, Michael, Metamorpho, and Plastic Man get sucked into a portal to the Dark Multiverse. This just keeps happening to the poor guy. While in the void, the trio meets Phantom Girl, filling out their team for 30 issues of science adventure. The Terrifics doesn't hide its Fantastic Four inspiration, and it cements Mr. Terrific's role as essentially the Reed Richards of the DC Universe. Mr. Terrific, Mr. Fantastic, it all fits! But of course, Michael still got his own story. In the Terrifics issue 13, he meets Ms. Terrific, his Earth 23 counterpart, who is a version of his wife Paula. In her world, it was Michael, not her, who died in the car crash. She even joins the team for a while, but gets called for a greater purpose when she acquires reality-altering powers and wings after being pulled into a time vortex. Classic breakup. That friendly rivalry between Batman and Mr. Terrific comes from them each knowing how smart the other is. In the Strange Adventure series from 2020, Batman has to decline a request to look into what space adventurer Adam Strange may be hiding. There's a conflict of interest because Strange is his friend. So who does he call? The guy who he knows is just as good at figuring things out as him, Mr. Terrific. What Michael discovers is indeed pretty huge. What initially seems to be Strange covering up war crimes in a space conflict is really a much bigger cover-up. Not only had Strange made a deal with an alien race called the Pix to sell out Earth, he had also faked his daughter's death. Upon reading Michael's letter laying all this out, Strange's wife, Alana, kills Strange in a struggle. Alana and Mr. Terrific travel to space to stop the invasion and save her daughter. After the Terrifics ended, Mr. Terrific started occasionally dropping in on the Justice League. He appeared but only briefly in the first issue of the 2018 Justice League series. He continued to show up throughout the series, usually in a support role, as what seems to be a reserve member of the team. He looks to be playing a bigger role in the 2024 Justice League Unlimited series, where he has largely helped direct the action from the League's Watchtower. Michael also took part in a recent reboot of the Justice Society. In the 2022 Justice Society of America series, he spearheads the effort to select new team members. One of those team members is Quiz Kid, a relatively new creation who has been retconned into being the original Mr. Terrific sidekick from the 1940s. Mr. Terrific seems to have left the JSA behind for the Justice League now though. Though most of his comics history has been with the Justice Society, it seems like Michael Holt will also be throwing in with a version of the Justice League on film in Superman. Though they're called the Justice Gang in the marketing for the film, the team he joins alongside Hawkgirl and Green Lantern Guy Gardner seems to most resemble Justice League International, given that it's headed by tech mogul Maxwell Lord. With Holt's position as the head of a technology company of his own, it'll be interesting to see if he winds up butting heads with Lord. Considering that Lord has turned out to be a villain in the comics on more than one occasion, it seems likely. Maybe he'll start up his own Justice Society or throw in with some other version of the Justice League. Either way, he better avoid portals to other dimensions. They love the guy.
Pop quiz. Is DC's Hawkgirl A, the reincarnation of an ancient Egyptian princess, B, an alien cop, or C, a spirit inhabiting the body of her grandniece? Of course it's D, all of the above. Here's the wildly complicated history of one of the new faces in Superman. There have been multiple Hawkgirls and Hawkwomen in DC Comics, but before we really get into the weeds on that, and trust us, there are a lot of weeds, here's what we know about the newest version. That's the one who's appearing in not only director James Gunn's 2025 Superman movie, but also the second season of Peacemaker.
Is that popcorn still here?
Love popcorn.
My butts are getting really big lately, so...
Besides loving popcorn, we know that actress Isabella Merced's take on the character is Kendra Saunders, the most recent version of Hawkgirl from the comics. She has her signature nth metal mace, and based on her costume, we can tell that she's a member of Justice League International. There's also a version of Hawkgirl who has been on that team, though comics Kendra has spent most of her time in the regular Justice League and Justice Society of America. Merced told the DC Studios Showcase official podcast that the movie Hawkgirl seems to have some of the history of the comics version.
Well, I mean, technically, this Kendra is reincarnated, but she's reincarnated from an alien.
So no, Hawkgirl isn't simply a girl with hawk powers, as the name might imply. It's honestly more wild and arcane than even that quote makes it sound. The original Hawkgirl, Shiera Sanders, debuted in Flash Comics #1 in 1940, but she didn't appear in costume as Hawkgirl until the next year, in All-Star Comics #5 as more or less Hawkman's sidekick. The Flash Comics story lays out the already complicated origin story of both Hawkman and Hawkgirl. They're the respective reincarnations of the ancient Egyptian prince and princess Khufu and Shiera, who were killed by the evil priest Hathset. The knife he used cursed them to be continually reincarnated throughout time.
I know the truth. We're the reincarnations of Qatar and Shiera Hall, and I love you.
Over the centuries, Shiera's other reincarnations included a medieval knight's lover, an Old West gunslinger, and a detective's wife in the early 20th century. Shiera eventually became the wife of Hawkman, Carter Hall, changing her name to Shiera Sanders Hall. She spent most of comics' golden age simply assisting her husband. She eventually went on to join the All-Star Squadron, but only he was a member of the Justice Society of America. She wasn't given a membership, despite her often offering them a helping hand. 3 guesses as to why. The couple had a son Hector, who would become a hero himself, Silver Scarab, then eventually Dr. Fate. The 1961 story, The Flash of Two Worlds, changed comics forever, setting up that all the Golden Age versions of characters lived in their own separate world, Earth 2, while the new Silver Age versions resided on Earth 1. So as the reincarnations of Khufu and Shiera went off into their own reality, a new Hawkman and Hawkgirl debuted that same year in The Brave and the Bold, #34. Qatar and Shiera Hall, whose name is pronounced the same as the Golden Age Hawkgirls but spelled differently, weren't Egyptian at all. They're from much further away, serving as law enforcement officers from the planet Thanagar. Though Qatar was initially unwilling to work with an inexperienced officer, Shiera saved his life while stopping one of the rare crimes on Thanagar, and they fell in love. They got married and were eventually sent to Earth to pursue another criminal. They apprehended him, but chose to go back to Earth to be superheroes. After starting his Earthbound adventures, the Silver Age Hawkman was quickly granted membership in the Justice League. As with the JSA, Hawkgirl wasn't offered a spot on the team, despite often being involved in missions. The official stated reason for her exclusion was that the Justice League didn't allow 2 members with the same powers, though in reality, there was just room for one woman, Wonder Woman, on the team at the time. The rule would finally be set aside in 1977 when Hawkgirl was finally given a seat at the table in Justice League of America #146. In that story, Hawkman makes an ultimatum that the League will either have both of them or neither. About time, Carter. After Hawkgirl proves pivotal in helping Red Tornado defeat an evil AI called Construct 3, the team gives in to Hawkman's demand. Much like the Silver Age Wonder Woman, Shiera Hall's evolution as a character reflected a lot of societal changes regarding women's rights. Not only did she eventually land a spot in the Justice League, but her civilian job also changed quite a bit too. Shiera's initial job in the 1960s was to be Qatar's secretary, as he served as the curator of the Midway City Museum. A few storylines revolved around her being jealous of another museum worker, Mavis Trent, who had designs on Hawkman. Eventually, Shiera became co-director of the museum, snagging a job on par with her husband's. In 1981, Shiera opted to change her superhero name to better reflect the times, too. In the Pages of World's Finest, #272, she declared that she preferred to be called Hawkwoman, noting that the connotations of the word girl on Earth do not please me. She'd keep the name for a few more years.
Wonder Woman! Hawkwoman! Catwalk above! Their leader!
Go!
Shiera didn't opt to change her name back after those few years. No, Hawkwoman essentially ceased to exist, as did all previous DC Comics characters, with the publication of the 1985 series Crisis on Infinite Earths, the first of several continuity-shifting crises to come. That series did away with the concepts of Earth 1 and Earth 2, instead dictating that there was just one version of each character in the DC universe.
There can be only one.
Of course, with Hawkman and Hawkwoman, everything was especially complicated. A new Hawkman series debuted in 1986 with Hawkwoman being part of it from the very beginning. At first, they seemed to just be lightly rebooted takes on the Silver Age versions of the characters. They joined Justice League International and were part of the team for around 6 issues. Eventually, the big rug pull came. This Hawkman wasn't Qatar Hall at all. He was Fel Andar, a Thanagarian sleeper agent collecting information for an eventual invasion. Hawkwoman was an Earthwoman named Sharon Parker who had been brainwashed into thinking she was Shayera Hall. She eventually learned of the deception, and Fel Andar stabbed her to death in 1992's Hawkworld number 23. This was ultimately just a way to get rid of the characters and restart them again. Comics. So why did the original post-crisis Hawkman and Hawkwoman have to be swept under the rug and, as DC hoped, forgotten forever? In 1989, Tim Truman wrote and drew the 3-issue miniseries Hawkworld, which was initially intended to simply provide the post-crisis versions of the characters with a deeper origin story. Because that's what Hawkman and Hawkwoman needed, right? More complicated origins? But the series turned out to be kind of a masterpiece. In it, Thanagar is a conquering force, stripping other planets of their resources to maintain an especially high standard of living for its aristocracy. Qatar Hall comes from an upper-class background but works for the Wingmen, the security force. He begins to doubt the planet's way of life and becomes especially disillusioned when Shayera Thal, the daughter of an administrator, is killed in an explosion organized by a corrupt commander, Byth. Qatar lashes out and is punished with exile to a remote island. After 10 years on the island, Qatar is brought back to the mainland and punished once again by being forced to live in the lower class. There, he meets a wing woman who reveals that she was a lower-class girl who was adopted by the administrator and given the name of his deceased daughter, Shayera Thal. In a big soap opera twist, it was eventually revealed that the first Shayera was, in fact, the second's mother. Qatar and Shayera work together to banish Byth from the planet and begin to improve conditions. The series was not only very good, but also very popular, leading DC to decide that this wasn't the origin for the existing Hawkman and Hawkwoman, but the start of the story for brand new versions of the characters. That's why the other Hawkman and Hawkwoman had to go bye-bye.
I think this loose cannon needs to be locked down before innocent people start getting hurt.
The original Hawkworld miniseries ends with Hawkman and Hawkwoman learning Byth has escaped to Earth. An ongoing series that began in 1990 picks up that thread, with Qatar and Shayera making their way to Earth to find him. They end up in Chicago, where they join the police department and take on the heroic mantles of the original Golden Age Hawkman and Hawkwoman, who, like all the Golden Age characters, were simply said to have disappeared. They eventually apprehend Byth and take him back to Thanagar, but choose to stay on Earth, much like the original Silver Age versions. The second Hawkworld series continued to follow their adventures and tie up the loose ends of the other post-crisis Hawkman and Hawkwoman until it ended with issue number 32. Another Hawkman series launched in 1993 and ran for an additional 33 issues. That series followed another continuity-altering event, 0 Hour, which merged the Hawkworld Hawkman with the undisappeared Golden Age Hawkman and Hawkgirl, making him a Hawk God figure. After that happened, Hawkman ended his relationship with Shayera. You know, a typical breakup. She retired from being a superhero. The Hawkwoman from Hawkworld did come back one last time, and she didn't make it. In a 2005 event called Ran-Thanagar War, the planet Ran is teleported into Thanagar's star system, throwing Thanagar out of its orbit and scorching the surface of the planet. Lots of Thanagarians are killed. The Ranians allow the survivors to take refuge on their planet, but tensions build and a war breaks out. In fairness, that is a very tense situation. We learn that Shayera Thal had at some point returned to Thanagar and taken her job as a wing woman back. She does what she can to protect her people, but she's ultimately killed by the Tamaranian Queen Commander, who has designs on conquering Thanagar for its nth metal. The series ends with the Ranians and Thanagarians still in conflict and the system growing even more chaotic. When the animated Justice League TV series debuted in 2001, the Shayera Hall Hawkgirl was made a founding member of that version of the team, maybe as a make-good for her being left out of so many teams in years past. The series and its follow-up Justice League Unlimited did a lot to try to synthesize all the different versions of the character, even bringing in the Golden Age Egyptian princess as one of her previous incarnations.
I'm not a girl anymore.
You look the same as you did the day I met you.
Perhaps even more surprisingly, the series did a spin on the story of the original post-crisis reboot, but this time it was Hawkgirl who was the Thanagarian spy. It's revealed that Shayera has been scouting Earth for the past 5 years and is actually engaged to a Thanagarian commander, despite having sparked a romance with Green Lantern John Stewart.
It was for your own good. You've got to trust me.
Why? Whose side are you really on?
But she's been duped too. While Hawkgirl was told that she was on a mission to protect Earth from an attack by Thanagarian enemies, the true purpose of her mission would essentially make Earth a disposable stepping stone as the Thanagarians set up an attack on those enemies. Shiera eventually betrays the Thanagarians and helps the Justice League shut down their machinery. She leaves the team for a while, but later rejoins with total loyalty to the League. A couple years before Shiera joined the animated Justice League, the comics introduced a whole new Hawkgirl, Kendra Saunders. A new JSA series launched in 1999, and she was specifically created to be part of it. The initial idea may have been to give her a fresh start, but it was once again convoluted from the jump. Given that the Justice Society was originally a Golden Age team, this new Hawkgirl had ties to the original version's origin. Grim ones.
The comic, the story's really dark.
Yeah.
It's actually so up. I wonder how they're going to handle that.
Kendra, a film student, committed suicide. She said it was dark. As Kendra's soul was leaving her body, the spirit of her great aunt, the original Hawkgirl, Shiera Sanders Hall, entered it. So while this new version of Hawkgirl has all the memories of Kendra, she has the soul of the original Hawkgirl. To add one more complication to it, in an attempt to tie everything together, the original Egyptian princess who was perpetually reincarnated was retconned to have been a Thanagarian the whole time, having crash-landed in Egypt in a spaceship some 3,000 years earlier. You might also be wondering, hey, didn't the original Hawkgirl merge with Hawkman to make him that Hawk God figure? Why, yes, she did. But that didn't last very long, and Hawkman got banished to Limbo, apparently freeing her spirit in the process. Kendra remained a member of the JSA through much of the 1999 series run. The story with the most focus on her involved her reuniting with a revived Hawkman. She later played a role in the Ran-Thanagar War story, helping to ease tensions between the two planets. Kendra recovered from that and joined the Justice League of America in 2006. Around that same time, she got her own title, which ran for 17 issues, continuing the previous Hawkman series. In it, Shiera Sanders Hall's spirit left her body and moved on to the afterlife, letting Kendra continue as Hawkgirl all on her own. Which is a nice ending, right? Ha, of course not. In the 2009 event Blackest Night, a whole bunch of dead DC Comics characters are revived as Black Lanterns. They're basically space zombies. One of the very first things that happens is that both Hawkman and Kendra are killed by zombified versions of Ralph and Sue Dibney and revived as Black Lanterns. The Black Lanterns are eventually defeated by, obviously, the White Lanterns, who also revive all the characters the Black Lanterns killed. Among them is Hawkgirl, but when she removes her helmet, she reveals that she's Shiera, not Kendra. Kendra's dead. The revived Shiera got a little bit of exploration in the follow-up series Brightest Day, but that ended up not really mattering because the entire post-crisis DC Comics universe got tossed out and replaced with a new one in 2011 with the Flashpoint event and the introduction of the New 52. One of the 52 launch titles of the New 52 was The Savage Hawkman, which introduced a reworked version of the Shiera Thal Hawkwoman. At first, this Hawkwoman is at odds with Hawkman, thinking he killed her brother and betrayed Thanagar. She learns otherwise and becomes his ally. She later gets stranded on Earth and joins the Chicago Police Department. She's briefly, and by that we mean a single panel, a member of the Justice League, helping them defeat Darkseid. Shiera's origin has been substantially revised over the past few years, making it so that she was actually Hawkman's wife back on Thanagar. She is also the reincarnation of Shra, not an Egyptian princess, but an angelic herald whom God has forced to perpetually reincarnate. So different, but not really any simpler. Kendra Saunders' Hawkgirl was introduced into the New 52 continuity in Dark Days, The Forge No. 1 in 2017, and confusingly is also the reincarnation of Shra, at the same time as Shiera Thal. Notably, the rebooted version of Kendra did not successfully commit suicide, though she attempted to. Through the attempt, she awakened an awareness of all of her past lives.
I think she carries all of the memories and the traumas and the mistakes of her past lives in her body wherever she goes.
Though the New 52 was a total reboot, more recent events, namely Rebirth from 2016, reintroduced some of the previous continuity back in. The 2023 Hawkgirl series reveals in a single line of dialogue that Blackest Night did in fact happen, and Kendra was in fact killed by the Black Lantern, though this version of her was resurrected as herself, not Shiera. She was part of a huge team of JSA members in the 2022 Justice Society of America series and has appeared regularly in the 2024 JSA book. Kendra was also a member of the Justice League for quite a while in the 2018 volume of that series. More on that in a minute. Yes, there's a third Hawkgirl or Hawkwoman in the post-Rebirth DC Comics universe, a version of Shiera Sanders Hall, the original Golden Age Hawkgirl. She was also introduced in 2017's Dark Days The Forge and is also a reincarnation of Shra. The big difference with this one, though, is that she was active in the mid-20th century rather than the present day. Back then, she fought villains alongside Hawkman and the Justice Society. She also fought in World War II and was a member of the All-Star Squadron, just like the original Golden Age version. Also, just like the original Shayera, she and Hawkman had a son named Hector. Justice League number 16 from 2019 revealed that Shayera died in some unknown way. In doing so, she was reincarnated as both Kendra and Shayera Thal, enabling both to exist concurrently. So glad that's explained. What isn't made clear is why she didn't get the same luck as the 1940s Hawkman, who is still alive thanks to greatly slowed aging. As we mentioned, Kendra was introduced in a prelude issue to the Dark Knight's Metal event from 2017. In that series, she's not Hawkgirl to start, but is instead the leader of the paramilitary group, the Blackhawks. Along with Wonder Woman and Dr. Fate, Kendra searches for nth metal, the only substance that can create a weapon strong enough to kill the demon Barbatos. On the search, she's corrupted by Barbatos' influence and briefly becomes the evil Lady Blackhawk, but the transformation gets reversed with Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. The lasso also reveals that Kendra is Hawkgirl. Using his discarded mace, Kendra is able to snap Hawkman out of his Barbatos-fueled corruption too, and the Justice League eventually defeats Barbatos. Fully rechristened as Hawkgirl and in a more familiar costume, Hawkgirl then joins the Justice League. The most Hawkgirl-focused story during Kendra's most recent stint in the Justice League came in the Escape from Hawkworld story arc that started in issue number 14. In fact, it's both Hawkgirl and Hawkwoman focused. Hawks all around. The Justice League travels to Thanagar Prime, seeking a Martian Elder, and encounters Shayera, who's become the planet's Empress. She tells the League that the Elder isn't there, but Kendra, who naturally feels a connection with Shayera since they're both reincarnated from the same being, doesn't trust her. Kendra confirms that Shayera is lying by touching her and reading her thoughts. This puts Shayera in direct conflict with the Justice League, and she attempts to kill them with a Hawkman construct she made. Shayera eventually reveals that she was trying to protect a weakened Thanagar Prime from an impending cosmic doom involving a being named Perpetua. It's also revealed that Perpetua was behind the two concurrent incarnations of Shra as a way of keeping Hawkgirl from her true destiny as the Cosmic Raptor. Sadly, because it would be very cool if she did, Kendra never actually becomes the Cosmic Raptor, and Perpetua isn't defeated until the 2020 Dark Knight's Death Metal event. Hawkgirl has made a few TV appearances outside of the Justice League cartoon, and the Superman movie isn't even her first time in live action. But first, more cartoons. The Silver Age Hawkgirl appeared in a couple episodes of Super Friends in the late 1970s. Hawkwoman appeared on Young Justice, and a version of Shayera Sanders Hall was a recurring character on the 2015 DC Superhero Girls web series. Shayera also made a cameo in the Harley Quinn animated series.
We always managed to find each other.
And here we are, 5,000 years later, still together.
Shayera Hall made her live-action debut on Smallville in its 10th season, but out of costume. Kendra Saunders' Hawkgirl got to really spread her wings in the CW's Arrowverse, first appearing on Arrow and then becoming a regular cast member on the first season of Legends of Tomorrow, which explored some of her torturous backstory. Shayera Sanders Hall also appeared in the Stargirl TV series, but only very briefly as a member of the Justice Society. So now that we've gone through all of that background, what could it mean for the Hawkgirl in Superman and Peacemaker? It's definitely more than possible that DC Studios heads James Gunn and Peter Safran's DCU will take things in an entirely new direction and ignore all the comic stories that came before. But there are lots of things they could pull from. Kendra could be one of two living reincarnations of the same being, with another on Thanagar. She could be related to the Hawkgirl of the past. She could become a member of the JSA if the JLI doesn't work out. She could be a Thanagarian spy who has come to Earth to pave the way for some nefarious plot, or she could die and be revived. All of those things have happened to Hawkgirl in her absolutely bananas comics history, and as you now know, a whole lot more.
Metamorpho stands among the weirdest of DC Comics' weird characters from the 60s, and he's set to hit the big screen in Superman. He has everything you need to know to not be confused by, or scared of, the Night King-looking hero. There are only fleeting glimpses of Metamorpho in the trailers for the 2025 Superman movie. If all you've ever seen of him is those quick shots, it'll be understandable to think he's a villain. He has a craggy face, displays his power by making his fingers crystals, and just sits by as Superman gets beaten by guards. That's a bad guy, right? According to Anthony Carrigan, the actor who plays him, that's not right. But he did note on the DC Studios Showcase official podcast that his version of Rex Mason is pretty conflicted.
This character in particular has this real kind of pathos to him. He's not crazy about the fact that he's a superhero.
Carrigan added that he thinks of Metamorpho as being cursed by his powers. He even compared Rex's condition to his own alopecia. So Metamorpho is something of a reluctant hero, but a hero nonetheless. In a June 3rd post on X, director James Gunn wrote alongside a poster featuring Carrigan's Metamorpho, "Can't wait to see Anthony Carrigan's haunted Rex Mason this July in Superman." Though we wouldn't necessarily call comics Metamorpho haunted, he was a ghost one time. We'll get to it. It's a pretty fair assessment to call Metamorpho's powers a curse. His origin by Bob Haney and Ramona Fradon is in The Brave and the Bold, number 57 from 1965. Mercenary Rex Mason is sent to Egypt by business tycoon Simon Stagg to find the Orb of Ra, an ancient weapon crafted from a meteor by the pharaoh Akhton. Rex finds it but gets knocked out by Stagg's bodyguard, Java, who takes the Orb of Ra with him. Trapped inside a pyramid, Rex gets exposed to Akhton's original meteor. It transforms him into a being whose body is made up of 4 different elements, one in each quadrant. He quickly learns that he can transmute his body into all kinds of different chemical compounds in solid, liquid, and gaseous states. This has lots of knock-on effects, like enabling him to stretch his limbs and transform him into different shapes and become extremely durable.
Behold the wonder of science!
Rex gets his revenge on Java in the form of a punch to the jaw. He soon asks the Justice League to rid him of his powers in Justice League of America number 42. Like Carrigan said, he doesn't love being a hero. He just wants to be a cool, tough guy, Rex Mason. The League has failed to restore him to his old self, but offer him a membership. He declines, but they all agree to make him a standby member of the team. Metamorpho was a major oddball in DC Comics, even among all the existing oddballs. The hero, who became known as the Fab Freak of 1001 Changes, got his own series in 1965, and it ran just 17 issues. And that's the longest a solo Metamorpho series has ever run. That book had the hero taking on plenty of villains of the month, but the overarching villain was Stagg, who aimed to control Metamorpho and use him for his own ends. It also followed the budding romance between the transformed Rex Mason and Stagg's daughter, Sapphire, and it introduced Urania Blackwell, also known as Element Girl, a CIA agent who purposefully recreated Metamorpho's origin to get similar powers. After the Metamorpho series was cancelled, the character made quite a few more appearances in The Brave and the Bold and World's Finest to team up with other heroes. In one story from The Brave and the Bold, issue 101 for example, Rex's powers are nearly removed in an experiment, but it has to end early so he can team with Batman to save Sapphire from a hired killer called Bounty Hunter. In another, World's Finest 217, he inadvertently gets Superman's powers and Batman's abilities, which eventually just go away on their own. Metamorpho was just a little too strange for a permanent shot on the Justice League, but he fit right in with a team that was literally called the Outsiders. He even named them. He was one of the founding members of the group in Batman and the Outsiders issue 1 from 1983. Batman gets them together to save a kidnapped Lucius Fox when the Justice League declines to get involved. The initial team, which also includes Halo, Katana, Black Lightning, and Geo-Force, decides to stick together, even though Metamorpho is still actively looking for a way to ditch his powers. A doctor named Helga Jace thinks she has a way to cure him, but before she can do that, Simon Stagg kills Metamorpho using the Orb of Ra.
No hard feelings? Dad?
Good night.
So the rest of the Outsiders have to re-expose him to the meteor to revive him. In the process, they're sent back to ancient Egypt for a while. You know, it happens. When that's over, Rex learns that the second exposure to the meteor has made his transformation into Metamorpho permanent. Metamorpho is initially distraught that he can't get rid of the powers he never wanted, but Sapphire Stagg makes it all better by proposing marriage. Rex eagerly accepts, but there's still one problem: her dad. And in case you're wondering, yes, Rex can use his powers to shapeshift to look like a regular guy. A few issues later, in Batman and the Outsiders number 24, the team foils an inside plot to assassinate Simon, and he finally gives the couple his blessing. Rex and Sapphire marry in Batman and the Outsiders annual number 2, but only after some complications allegations involving Sapphire getting kidnapped. Rex and Sapphire even tried to have a baby, but unfortunately for them, Dr. Jace turns out to be a sleeper agent for the Manhunters, an invading alien force. She blasts him with a ray gun and essentially vaporizes him. It took a different alien invasion to bring Metamorpho back again. In the Invasion event from 1988, he's reconstituted when the Dominators set off their gene bomb, which is pretty harmful for everyone else. In true comic soap opera fashion, the revived Rex Mason has partial amnesia. He becomes a charter member of Justice League Europe with no knowledge of his marriage to Sapphire. She finally tracks him down in Justice League number 11 and introduces Rex to their son, Joey, who can alter the molecules of any substance, not just his own body. Sadly, Rex and Sapphire have to go their separate ways because Simon forces her to marry Java. In the Metamorpho miniseries from 1993, Rex meets a woman named Gillian Conway, who was also exposed to the meteor and claims to know a way to get rid of Joey's powers. But as it turns out, she misinterpreted some hieroglyphics, so when she tries to reverse her own mutation, she's killed. In the process of that, Joey touches the original meteor, both eliminating his powers and rendering the meteor inert. Estranged from Sapphire, Rex begins seeing his teammate, Crimson Fox. His form also starts becoming rockier and harder to control. They both eventually join Justice League America, where Crimson Fox is killed in battle. In 1997's JLA number 1, Rex sacrifices himself, saving his team from dying on re-entry to Earth from space. Now that's a way to die. The newly formed JLA buries him in issue number 5.
So, he comes back, does he?
Eventually, this time he stays dead for around 6 years, but still exists as a spirit. He's finally brought back in the 2003 one-shot, JLA/JSA, Secret Files and Origins. Simon Stagg is forced to open his vault, revealing the Orb of Ra. The ghost of Metamorpho flies into it, thus coming back to life. Metamorpho takes his fourth chance at life to join a short-lived version of the Doom Patrol. Then he joins another short-lived version of the Doom Patrol for a while. But let's talk about some other things that happened that were way more interesting. There's no good way to lead into this sentence, so we're just gonna say it. In Birds of Prey number 51 and 52 from 2003, Simon Stagg, Sapphire, and Joey get caught in an accident in Simon's lab that makes them a single being made out of energy. Metamorpho, who has taken on the form of Java, snaps out of it and separates them with the help of Black Canary. Along the same lines of mergers and separations, in Outsiders number 7 from 2004, a second Metamorpho appears. This apparent double turns out to be a piece of the Rex's body, which had fallen off during his death back in JLA issue 1. Rex initially wants to get rid of the clone, but the Outsiders convince him that this is a sentient being, and he joins the team under the name Shift. Shift remains a member of the Outsiders for a few years, but chooses to rejoin Metamorpho in Outsiders Annual number 1 from 2007 after a mission goes wrong. Though he took a break from the team for a bit while Shift joined up, Metamorpho was a key part of the Outsiders in the volumes from both 2003 and 2007, when it was once again called Batman and the Outsiders for 14 issues. The title changes after a story in which Batman goes missing, and Metamorpho once again seems to die. A robot called Remac explodes because of a virus, destroying the Outsiders' headquarters and seeming to take Metamorpho with it. But as it turns out, Metamorpho hitched a ride inside the body of Katana, thus surviving. Metamorpho remained part of the Outsiders team, which was reformed by Alfred until the end of the volume. In one key story, Sapphire dies and Simon Stagg tries to revive her by sapping the life force from Black Lightning. Simon's device is destroyed and Sapphire is only briefly revived, leading Metamorpho to rekindle his hatred for Simon. Batman returns to once again lead the team in the final issue, number 40 from 2011. Now's as good of a time as any to take a break from Metamorpho's comics history to look back at where he's appeared in TV and movies. Superman is his first time in live action, but the Element Man has shown up in a good number of animated projects. DC attempted to get an animated adaptation of Metamorpho off the ground in the 1960s, but it was never produced, so his first TV appearance came in 2002 in the Justice League two-parter Metamorphosis. The episodes retell Metamorpho's origin and also briefly make him an antagonist after Simon Stagg tricks Rex into thinking Green Lantern John Stewart is trying to steal Sapphire away from him. But he snaps out of it and helps the League defeat Stagg.
Shut up and get this through that thick head of yours! I love you, you big dope!
Metamorpho later showed up as a member of the League in Justice League Unlimited. Rex next appeared in a few episodes of Batman Brave and the Bold from 2009 to 2011. That version was a teenage member of the Outsiders. The Metamorpho who appears in Beware the Batman from 2013 was also a founding member of the Outsiders. Rex made his theatrical debut in Teen Titans Go to the Movies in 2018 in a brief cameo. He was also featured in Season 3 of Young Justice in 2019. Back to comics. In 2011, DC tossed out all of its previous continuity and started fresh with the New 52. One of those 52 new titles was Justice League International, which included the first appearance of an already active Metamorpho, who was under consideration for the new team, but not chosen. That is the entirety of his role in that series, and though he doesn't appear in the issue, Batman Incorporated #1 mentions that some of Metamorpho's history is intact, namely his sacrifice to save his teammates during re-entry. Metamorpho honestly appeared very little in the first few years of the New 52. He didn't become a regular in a series until 2016 with the Legends of Tomorrow anthology book, which was named for the TV show but largely focused on different characters, aside from Firestorm. That series tweaks Metamorpho's origin story a bit, while he still gets exposed to the meteor while looking for the Orb of Ra. Simon Stagg immediately places a transformed Rex into captivity to experiment on him. It's only with the help of Sapphire, who is now an accomplished biochemist, that he can escape and become a hero. Metamorpho's post-New 52 origin is changed considerably more in the 2018 series Doomsday Clock, the Watchmen sequel that merged the landmark 1986 series with mainline DC continuity. That series explores the Superman theory, an attempt to explain why so many superheroes are American. Metamorpho is one of the metahumans who steps forward to admit his origin was tied to the US government, and that he was exposed to the meteor on purpose, with Simon Stagg under pressure from the feds for committing tax fraud. By the time Metamorpho's origin gets retold again in Batman Superman World's Finest Annual 2024, all of that government meddling stuff is totally gone. Rex heavily implies that he found the meteor entirely by accident, but that story does add a new wrinkle. Rex wasn't just a soldier of fortune, but was inspired to be an explorer by his dad, also a famous explorer, Montana Mason. As Doomsday Clock was still coming out, Metamorpho started appearing in another 2018 series with a much lighter tone, The Terrifics. Metamorpho was one of 4 members of the title team, alongside Metamorpho's Superman co-star Mr. Terrific, Plastic Man, and Phantom Girl. The 30-issue series was in many ways a take on Marvel's Fantastic Four, with lots of sciencey adventure in other realms and found family melodrama. They even fight a villain who strongly resembles Dr. Doom, Doc Dredd, who turns out to be Java in a costume. Though it isn't a one-to-one exactly. Metamorpho largely occupies the role of the Thing, Ben Grimm, including their shared desire to be rid of their bodily transformations and just be their old human selves again.
Do you want to be Ben Grimm again?
The Thing has turned back into Ben Grimm a few times, and pretty early on in the Terrifics, Rex gets his wish too, thanks to Mr. Terrific. By issue number 12 though, Rex decides that he has to transform back into Metamorpho to save his teammates from mortal danger, thanks to Doc Dredd and 3 evil alternate universe doubles. After the Terrifics came to an end in 2020, Metamorpho occasionally started working with the Justice League on some of the bigger stuff. For one, he helped repel a bunch of demons from Superman's Fortress of Solitude. He also helped defend the Hall of Justice from an army of possessed supervillains during the Dark Crisis event. At one point, he also took over the social media presence of Shazam, and for some reason we can't fathom, it wasn't popular. In the Absolute Power event from 2024, Metamorpho is among a group of superheroes who get depowered and captured by Amanda Waller, but she's defeated and their powers are restored. Afterward, he's offered membership in the new Justice League Unlimited, but isn't sure about accepting the spot because of his past with the team. He does appear very briefly a few times in the Justice League Unlimited series though, so he's probably still on reserve. Even though Metamorpho has his hesitations about being in the Justice League, one job he couldn't pass up was helping Santa Claus, who is 100% real in the DC universe. In the series Batman Santa Claus, Silent Night Returns from 2024, he's one of several heroes summoned to help Santa's wife, Eula, save St. Nick from the clutches of the zombified Silent Night. After some misunderstandings get taken care of, Eula does non-fatally cut off Metamorpho's head at one point. Rex helps the group track Santa to Silent Night's castle, which is protected by numerous monsters. To help the cause, Metamorpho transforms into a shield and suit of armor for Jason Blood to wear, so he can lay claim to the kingdom, thus putting Silent Night's reign to an end. Rex and the other heroes then get to visit the North Pole, which is pretty sweet. For the first time since his origin got retold in 2007's Metamorpho Year 1, Rex finally got his own title once again in 2025, a 6-issue miniseries that seems to at least somewhat tie into the Superman movie. The series does a lot. It establishes that Rex and Sapphire are once again engaged and reintroduces Element Girl, now called Element Gal, for the first time in 35 years. It also brings in Element Woman, who was seemingly intended to be the new 52 replacement for Element Girl, as well as Algarn, the Element King, the ancient element man who served as a villain in the original Metamorpho series. Perhaps most importantly, it brings back Element Dog, aka Metamorpho, who was introduced in the Terrifics. As for its ties to Superman, the big bad of the series is revealed in issue number 5 to be Solaris, the Tyrant's son, who also seems to be that big celestial object wreaking havoc in the movie's trailers.
Your people will pray to me.
The synthetic star takes her son's place in the sky, and Metamorpho is initially disintegrated by one of its beams. Rex's seeming death sends him on a metaphysical journey into the Ra realm, which enables him to return with the power to become any element in any state. He chooses to transform into hydrogen in fusion, thus becoming a sun and absorbing Solaris. It's yet to be seen just how much screen time Metamorpho will get in Superman, but it's clear that both Gunn and Kerrigan are excited to bring him to the big screen. At the very least, the characters in Metamorpho's supporting cast seem to have a lot of influence in the new DCU. A Stag Industries logo is very visible in the Superman trailer. Does that mean Metamorpho could get his own movie someday? Maybe, but our guess is that the movie DCU will probably handle him much like the comics have over the past 60 years and make him part of a team. Given how long he was part of Justice League Europe, an offshoot of Justice League International, we think there's a pretty good chance he'll be joining up with Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific for whatever that team does down the line. Hates Superman. Rich. Bold most of the time. Aside from those key attributes, what really makes Lex Luthor the character he is? There have been a lot of different takes over 85 years. Here's what to know about all of them before seeing Superman. Nicholas Hoult is taking on the role of Lex Luthor in the 2025 Superman movie, and the actor has remained pretty tight-lipped about his portrayal. But he has stated in interviews that the version of Lex in director James Gunn's script isn't like other screen portrayals.
This version of Lex is really fun and different.
That said, Hoult has also stated that his version of Lex is grounded in the character's extensive, and we do mean extensive, comic book history.
I was just trying to be truthful to what I felt connected from the comics and those source materials to this script and this story.
In fact, Hoult said there was one comics miniseries in particular that was especially influential on his performance, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Superman's arch-nemesis debuted in Action Comics issue 23 in 1940 without a first name, but with hair. The hair will come and go a lot, so take notes. The first evil plot of the anonymous Luthor involves sabotaging peace negotiations between two fictional European countries. He hopes to weaken the governments of various nations so that he can step in and take control. Superman beats up all his henchmen and crashes his airship, foiling his plan. In his second appearance in Superman issue 4, it's established that Luthor is a mad scientist who attempts to use all manner of weaponry to harm Superman. It all fails. Luthor continued to pop up with plots to kill Superman. In one, he tries to use an artifact called the Power Stone to give himself Superman-like strength. The big issue with his plan is that he sends Superman himself to retrieve the stone, and Supes does not give him the real thing. Luthor is bold in that story, but it's not due to any great narrative reason. It's because of an art mistake. An artist on a Superman comic strip apparently confused Luthor with another bold villain, the Ultra Humanite, and drew him as bold. It stuck. The golden age of comics came to an end in the late 1950s, and the 1961 story The Flash of Two Worlds established that those early versions of all of DC's superheroes lived in a whole different universe. So, the original Luthor, who essentially hated Superman just because he always messed up his plans, went off to Earth 2, while the new Luthor with a different backstory lived in the main DC universe, Earth 1. And if you think that's confusing, just hang on. The Earth 1 Luthor does have a first name, Alexis, which he shortens to Lex. He actually grows up with Superboy, the young Clark Kent, in Smallville. Young Lex is a Superboy superfan who begs his traveling salesman father to move the family to Smallville so he can meet him and become his friend. Very normal. Things go badly almost immediately. When Lex accidentally causes a fire in his lab, Superboy blows it out. In the process, Superboy knocks over a bottle of acid, and the fumes make the teenage Lex totally, permanently bald. That's all it takes. Lex vows revenge on Superboy and enacts multiple plots to kill him. Lex destroys his reputation in the process and makes many trips to juvenile hall or boarding school. It gets so bad that his parents kick Lex out and change their last name to Thorol, giving the name to Lex's younger sister, Lena, too. Imagine screwing up so bad your parents move away and change their names. You might become a supervillain too. Lex and Superman both grow up and move to Metropolis. Lex's first plot there involves stealing money via wire fraud, and Superman catches him. This time, Lex is sent to actual prison, giving him an even harder edge. He challenges Superman to a one-on-one fight. He steals Superman's expended power to build a suit of armor with which to challenge him. He makes himself a kryptonite man. He tricks Superman into the path of a duplicator ray, thus creating another longtime villain, Bizarro.
Me am Superman?
Yes, of course you are.
We could describe plenty more similar stories, but the clear main character trait of Silver Age Lex is hatred of Superman. He does, however, have a soft spot in his heart for his sister Lena, who doesn't even know she's related to him. Lex even briefly sides with Superman and Supergirl against a group of Kryptonian criminals at one point because Lena is caught in the crossfire. Considering that they're the arch-nemesis of Superman and Batman retrospectively, it isn't a huge surprise that Luthor and the Joker have joined forces a few times, even though it doesn't really seem like they have much in common outside of work. They first team up in World's Finest issue 88 from 1957, where they jointly open a manufacturing company to make humanoid robots. They try to trick Batman and Superman into thinking two of the robots are, in fact, them, but the two heroes figure it out and capture them. The two team up again in World's Finest issue 129, attempting to use a molecular rearranger to dispose of Superman long enough to steal some precious gems. It doesn't work. In yet another story in Joker issue 7, the two swap personalities. The Silver Age was a weird time. For more proof of how wacky it was, look no further than Superman issue 147, where Lex from prison contacts the 30th Century Legion of supervillains and brings them to the 20th century, where he sicks them on Superman. The Legion of superheroes from the same future time have to step in to save him. Silver Age Lex also have plenty of team-ups with another of Superman's top bad guys, Brainiac. In one, they work together to try to kill Superman, but Luthor won't allow Brainiac to steal from the planet Lexor, which has a society that reveres Lex. The prototypical Lex Luthor look is probably a well-tailored suit or a prison uniform, but a third iconic look debuted in Superman issue 282 from 1974. If you've ever watched an episode of Super Friends, you've seen a version of it as the animated Lex leads the Legion of Doom.
From now on, we'll be known as the Legion of Doom!
He calls the purple and green getup his battle array, which has rocket boots so he can fly and a cadre of high-tech weapons he can use against Superman. It's as goofy as it sounds, but it's a memorable look. Luthor's battle array has come back in different forms over the years, mostly for nostalgic reasons. It's clear that the original purpose of the costume was to give Lex a distinctive appearance so DC could make toys that weren't just a bold, middle-aged man in a business suit. While Lex was rocking his battle array in cartoons, the 1978 Superman movie was keeping him true to his roots and suits. Gene Hackman played Lex in the film, and despite having a first name, he's considerably more like the Golden Age version than what was in the comics at the time. He didn't grow up with Superman, has hair at first, and hopes to enact a plot to bomb the San Andreas Fault to create new beachfront property. As usual, Superman stops him. When he brings him to jail at the end, Lex reveals that he didn't actually have hair all along.
Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of our time!
The movie also introduces two lackeys for Lex, the bumbling Otis and his girlfriend, Eve Tessmacher. Versions of both will be in the 2025 film. Hackman's Lex returned in 1980's Superman 2, where he strikes an alliance with General Zod and his other Kryptonian criminals to take down Superman, but ends up getting the raw end of that deal. He sat out Superman 3 but came back for 1987's Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, where he creates a clone of Superman, Nuclear Man. Comics Lex would continue to wear his battle array into the 1980s. In the DC Comics Presents Annual from 1982, it helps to differentiate him from the returning Golden Age Luthor, who's given the first name Alexei. The two Luthors come up with a plan to switch universes and take down their respective Supermen. They make the mistake, though, of setting up a lair on Earth 3. That world's Lex is a superhero, and he helps the Earth 1 and Earth 2 Supermen take down his evil counterparts. Earth 1 Lex gets a further and even more toyetic upgrade in 1983's Action Comics issue 544, where he starts wearing a war suit that is, of course, still purple and green. The story finds Lex finally getting sick of constantly losing to Superman, so he hops on a spaceship and leaves Earth. He travels to Luxor, where he lives a life of peace for a time, but he can't get over his obsession with Superman. So he upgrades an ancient armored war suit. He and Superman fight, and Lex accidentally destroys Luxor in the process, making his hatred for Supes even stronger. All those Earths get pared down to just one single DC Comics universe in the 1985 series, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Ever the opportunist, Lex sees the chaos of the series' antagonist, the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor destroying universes as a chance to take control of what's left. So he and Brainiac assemble an army of supervillains to join them in their quest. To prove how serious he is, Earth 1 Lex even kills Earth 2 Lex in front of them all. During the inevitable battle between the villains and the heroes, the Spectre steps in to put a stop to it. He convinces them instead to work together to stop the Anti-Monitor. The villain army is sent back in time to prevent the creation of the Anti-Monitor's technology. But infighting causes them to fail. The multiverse is shattered and reformed into a single universe with just one Earth. It also leaves just one Lex, who finds himself in a prison cell with no memory of the crisis. Crisis on Infinite Earths was a big reset button for DC Comics, to the point where the Lex who appeared in the prison cell near the end of the series wasn't even the version who showed up in the Superman comics that followed. The Man of Steel miniseries from 1986 introduces Alexander Luthor, a millionaire industrialist who is balding but is still clinging onto some red hair. His company, LexCorp, essentially runs the city of Metropolis. Superman's arrival in the city quickly upends the balance of power, though. Superman reveals that Lex knows about a terrorist attack on his own yacht in advance, and he's arrested. It's no secret that the post-crisis Lex is at least partially based on Donald Trump. The 1989 one-shot Lex Luthor, the unauthorized biography, has exactly the same cover design as Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. This Lex has been married 8 times, and has plans to make Lois Lane his 9th wife. Unlike the Silver Age Lex, he was not childhood friends with Clark Kent, but he did know Daily Planet editor Perry White as a kid. His issues with Superman no longer stem from a personal beef, but a notion that it's unfair that Superman got all his power from birth. Well, Lex had to work his way up to where he is.
They need to see the fraud you are.
With the launch of a new Superman title in 1987, a vengeful and once again totally bald Lex gets his hands on the only kryptonite on Earth, fashioning a ring out of it. It prevents Superman from ever getting close to him, but it also has some unintended side effects for Lex himself. Action Comics issue 600 reveals that the radiation from the ring has given Lex kryptonite poisoning, and he has to lose his right hand. That's not the end of it, though. Lex later learns that it wasn't just poisoning. The ring gave him cancer that has metastasized. It's terminal, and here's where the story goes from pretty serious to comic book insanity. Lex fakes his death in a plane crash so that he can transplant his brain into a clone of himself who has a full head of red hair, a beard, and an Australian accent. The new Lex claims to be his own son. Unfortunately for him, the clone body starts rapidly aging and starts to break down. He's only saved when the demon Neron offers to restore his health in exchange for his soul. Luthor accepts and gets his youth back, without hair. The post-crisis Lex has 2 children, so to speak. His daughter has the same name as the Silver Age Lex's sister, Lena. After his 8th wife, the Contessa Erica Alexander del Portenza gives birth to Lena. Lex has a Contessa drugged into submission. He wants to raise Lena all by himself, but the Contessa escapes and has Lena kidnapped, leading Lex to confide in Superman after he rescues her that Lena is all he truly cares about. Yet that doesn't last very long. Lena gets caught up in a conflict between the current Brainiac and a future version, Brainiac 13. To save his own being, Brainiac downloads his mind into Lena, but Lex makes a deal with Brainiac 13 to hand over the other Brainiac's vessel, Lena, so he can take credit for not only saving Metropolis but advancing it with future technology. An aged-up Lena, still inhabited by Brainiac, made a few more appearances. Lex's son, as it were, is the post-crisis Superboy, who first emerges as a potential Superman replacement in the Death of Superman storyline. It's revealed very early that Superboy is a genetic construct created by Project Cadmus with half of Superman's DNA. But when Superboy eventually joins the Teen Titans, it's revealed that the other half of his DNA comes from none other than Luthor. The 1990s and 2000s were a big time for Superman TV shows, and every series had a pretty wildly different version of Lex. Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, debuted in 1993, and its take on Lex fit the more romance-focused tone of the show. While still a businessman and criminal, John Shay's curly-haired Lex is also a romantic rival of Superman, hoping to steal away Lois Lane's affections. The Lex of Superman the Animated Series, which premiered in 1996, is very much in the mold of the post-crisis take on the character. The Clancy Brown-voiced Lex is a powerful, egomaniacal, and bold business tycoon who hates Superman for his innate abilities.
My biotech people will spend years studying your carcass. I'm certain it will be a most profitable endeavor.
That series also introduces Lex's bodyguard and right-hand woman, Mercy Graves, who would go on to appear in the comics. Brown would continue to voice Lex in multiple other animated projects over the years. Smallville made the Superman story into a teen drama in 2001, so that version of Lex, played by Michael Rosenbaum, spends more time in the title town, becoming friends with Clark Kent. He doesn't grow up there though, instead coming to Smallville as a child and getting caught in a meteor shower, losing all of his hair. As a young adult, Lex is sent back to Smallville by his father, Lionel Luthor, to run a local subdivision of Luthor Corp. He becomes more vengeful over time, killing his father and becoming Superman's archenemy. More recently, John Cryer played Lex in the Arrowverse shows, and Michael Cudlitz portrayed a bearded version on Superman and Lois. It could absolutely be a fake-out, but one of the trailers for the 2025 Superman movie heavily implies that Lex Luthor may be the President of the United States.
Did you consult with the President?
If he indeed is, then that would harken back to the Lex 2000 story from the comics, where Luthor runs for president on a technological progress platform and wins. The presidency immediately gets Lex access to top-secret documents that reveals Clark Kent is, in fact, Superman. But that info gets erased from his memory in a later story because it's comics, and that always happens. Lex's presidency sets him against not just Superman, but Batman, who learns Lex played a major role in Gotham City being cut off from aid after an earthquake. After some successful machinations, including framing Batman for murder, Lex overplays his hand. Superman and Batman corner him in the Oval Office, so Lex uses a combination of Bane's venom, kryptonite, and a new war suit to go on a rampage, revealing his true colors to the world. Lex goes missing and is impeached and indicted. In an interview on the Happy Sad Confused podcast, Nicholas Hoult said there was one comic that he kept coming back to as an inspiration for his take on Lex Luthor.
The one that I found myself picking up again a lot was Luthor Man of Steel.
And that makes sense because that 5-issue 2005 series by Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo really aims to get inside Lex's head. Set before the events of Lex 2000, it presents a Luthor who is truly invested in at least giving the appearance of being a philanthropist. But he is also eaten up by his jealousy of Superman. He thinks the man in his name is a lie. Superman is an alien with too much power who has tricked people into admiring him. In an attempt to draw people's adoration away from Superman, Lex creates his own android superhero named Hope. Lex orchestrates a bombing attack at a daycare. Hope, under Lex's control, flies to a great height and drops the apparent bomber, Toyman. Superman saves him, thus leading to a fight between Hope and Superman. Lex makes Hope self-destruct, placing the blame for her death on Superman. Superman then confronts him, leading Lex to vow to destroy public trust in Big Blue however he can. Director James Gunn has made it repeatedly known that his biggest inspiration for his Superman movie is the 2006 All-Star Superman miniseries by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Its take on Lex Luthor couldn't be more different from the Lex Luthor Man of Steel series. It features a Lex who has been sentenced to death for his many crimes against humanity. Yet Superman, who has limited time to live, is convinced he can find the good in his arch-rival. Lex escapes his execution thanks to a serum that gives him Superman-like powers, and he creates a path of destruction through Metropolis. Superman shoots Lex with a gravity gun, thus causing Lex's metabolism to accelerate, eating through his temporary powers quickly. As Lex's powers fade, he begins to at least briefly see the world as Superman does. When Lex snaps out of it, Superman still has to punch him out. The 2003 series Superman Birthright aimed to update Supes' origin story for the 21st century, but in the process it brought back some 1960s flair, once again making Lex a childhood friend of Clark Kent's in Smallville. 2 years later, Infinite Crisis, the events that reintroduced the DC multiverse, tinkered with Lex's origin even more. The event finds Alexander Luthor Jr. from Earth 3 posing as the Prime Earth Lex to manipulate various figures to restore the multiverse. But Prime Earth Lex works behind the scenes to get other villains on his side, and finally allows the Joker to kill Alexander Luthor Jr. Alexander's efforts lead to some changes for Lex. Namely, it makes Lex come from old money, with his ancestors being a long line of industrialists which date back to Metropolis's founding. Though he did have to revive the family fortune after it was lost in the 1929 stock market crash. It also reintroduced his sister, Lena. After nearly 20 years without a Superman movie, Big Blue and Lex came roaring back to theaters with 2006's Superman Returns. The film serves as a direct sequel to Superman 2, ignoring the third and fourth films. As such, Kevin Spacey plays an over-the-top version of Gene Hackman's take on Lex.
But millions of people will die.
Billions! Once again, the press underestimates me.
His plan is even a variation on the one from the first movie. He plans to use kryptonite crystals to create a new continent in the Atlantic Ocean, where he'd own the land. But Superman lifts the landmass out of the ocean and throws it into space. Lex would appear again in a very different form in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice in 2016. Jesse Eisenberg's version of the character is a long-haired tech mogul who manipulates Batman and Superman into fighting each other until they realize that he's the real threat. As a plan B, Lex releases a genetically engineered monster that kills Superman. Lex is sent to prison where his head is shaved. After Infinite Crisis, post-crisis Lex does a few more things, including becoming an Orange Lantern powered by greed in Blackest Night. But all that got wiped away in 2011, with yet another universe-wide DC reboot, the New 52. This new Lex is a grab bag of previous versions of the character, grew up in Smallville, has a sister named Lena, has an obsession with kryptonite, is an accomplished scientist, and is a successful businessman. He also has a daughter named Lena, who becomes tied to Brainiac. He creates Bizarro, and he participates in the creation of Superboy with Project Cadmus. The big difference this time, though, is that this Lex tries to be a superhero when he first arrives in Metropolis. Upon hearing about a string of missing persons cases, Lex dons a costume and goes after the perpetrators, Farm and Graft. Upon seeing that they're working with kryptonite, though, Lex strikes a deal with them. Lex ends up not only betraying them, but also his mother, who had started LexCorp. The New 52 Lex also gets his war suit pretty quickly, all things considered. After buying 38 different companies to build it, Lex dons the suit in the Forever Evil event from 2013. Lex doesn't much like the alternate universe crime syndicate taking over his Earth, so he bands together his own Injustice League to take them down and save the Justice League from their imprisonment. In the aftermath, the Injustice League and Lex in particular are hailed as heroes. After some persistent persuasion, Lex even eventually lands a spot on the Justice League. Among his adventures with the League is stopping the Amazo virus, which LexCorp invented. Whoops! He also helped take down Darkseid, absorbing a big chunk of his energy. Lex then decided to quit the League and stay on the planet Apocalypse as its new leader. Lex gets bored with being a space king and comes back to Earth at just about the time the New 52 Superman is revealed to be dead. Thinking there was no replacement, Lex puts on a costume of his own design and declares himself the new Superman. He doesn't realize that the pre-New 52 Superman has come to the universe until he appears, first to fight, but eventually to assist Luthor in his heroic efforts. They work together for a while, but disagreements lead to Lex destroying his S symbol and becoming an independent hero for a while. The inevitable heel turn eventually comes in 2018's Justice League No Justice, where Lex realizes that he's an agent of entropy, not order. So he goes and forms a new Legion of Doom to fight against the Justice League. The goddess Perpetua offers the once again evil Lex a chance at far greater power, and he takes it, fusing with Martian Manhunter to become Apex Lex. He goes on to find versions of himself from throughout the multiverse to recruit into an army. Perpetua, who wants to reshape the multiverse in her own image, wants Lex to take down the Batman who laughs, whom she sees as a threat to her plans. Lex attempts to do so, but realizes his powers are useless against the Batman who laughs. Yet he manages to bring the Batman Who Laughs back to Perpetua. The Batman Who Laughs then convinces Perpetua that she doesn't need Lex anymore, and should instead work with him. Convinced, Perpetua casts Lex back to Earth, powerless. He more or less goes back to being the old Lex again. Among the villainous acts Lex carries out back on Earth is killing his former employee, Manchester Black, for which he's sent to prison. In what seems like a never-ending cycle of going from villain to hero and back for the post-New 52 Lex, the imprisoned Luthor uses nanotechnology to turn LexCorp into SuperCorp, offering all the resources and manpower of his company to Superman to help protect Metropolis. While Superman has a very hard time trusting Lex's intent, Lex's motives indeed seem to be genuine. He helps Superman take down longtime villains, Parasite and Brainiac, and they also work together against Lex's old enemies, Farm and Graft. A temporarily free Lex even helps to feed to revived Doomsday. What ought to be pretty clear by this point is that not only has Lex Luthor played a lot of different roles in Superman stories over the past 85 years, but there have been multiple different Lexes and lots of different universes. So, what will the version that James Gunn and Nicholas Hoult bring to life look like? Well, just based on the trailers, it seems that we can probably rule out the more heroic takes on Lex. All indications point to him being a full-on bad guy. But Holt's particular affection for Lex Luthor Man of Steel does seem to indicate he's not likely to be a Lex who openly starts a group called Legion of Doom or Injustice League. At the very least, he thinks he's doing the right thing by opposing Superman. Gunn explained.
I think he sees him as a threat to his livelihood and his legacy.
We'll see exactly how it all plays out when Superman hits theaters July 11th.